Yo, what is going on everyone? I'm back again here with a new video here in the Ultra League Premier Cup featuring Stunfisk, Obstagoon and Como-O. And this team has been really working fine for me, so we'll get to see some bad leads and some good leads and how we play it out. So without further ado, let's get started here. First matchup we see the Stunfisk versus the Trevenant. So really bad lead for me here. I decide to swap in the Como-O. Opponent answers with Wall Rain. The thing here is that I cannot reach double close combat before he reaches double Icicle Spear, so I will just bait with a Dragon Claw here, which my opponent decides to shield. At this point we can shield one Icicle Spear and then throw our close combat, and we even take 2 shields or we take switch. Let's see if our opponent decides to shield a close combat here, which will take it out. He does not decide to shield. Opponent is waiting the switch timer here. Let's see if he wants to bring back in the Trevenant. Even though we are debuffed, the Shadow Claws don't really add up that much. So here our opponent decides to throw before I will reach a Dragon Claw. Here we can just wait the timer a bit and then we can go in with Obstagoon onto the Trevenant. Opponent decides to swap in Gyarados and then we have Stunfisk. And this is what we get from flipping a bad lead. Opponent is dealing some nice fast move damage here, but it is not really quick with the fast moves, so here we get to throw a Rock Slide, which will deal super effective damage. Opponent decides to shield a Rock Slide. We will throw another Rock Slide at 3 here, make sure we throw on good timing so they don't sneak. But the Rock Slide will not take out the Gyarados, but we still deal nice damage here. And I still have 1 shield. So the thing is, do I decide to shield from Gyarados or do I decide to shield from the Trevenant? And we do get the debuff here. So here we can just throw 1 Night Slash. And let's see, we don't take it out. We decide to swap in the Trevenant. Here we are debuffed, but the Seed Bombs are not really that threatening right now. So we just farm up a bit more, throw a Night Slash. Opponent will leave this Night Slash, so what I can do is just farm it all the way down and shield once. Here we do shield the Seed Bomb, which would have taken us out. And then we can just throw the Night Slash onto the Gyarados. Night Slash does connect, and this will take it out. And GG's first game. Bad lead, we still got the job done. Well played to my opponent there. Next matchup here, we have Stunfisk versus a Shadow Swampert. So actually a worse lead. We see a bit of lag, so I am unable to swap out, but here we swap into our Como and we are met with the Talonflame. Here we will just start ramping up with those Dragon Claws. Opponent decides not to shield. Here we farm up a bit more. For another Dragon Claw, will this get shielded? If he decides to shield, I am pretty sure that he is going for a Brave Bird here. So here I can just shield myself. I would not have lived that Brave Bird. And I also really can't have my Stunfisk aligned onto the Shadow Swampert. Let's see what the opponent decides to go in with. Does he decide to go in with the Swampert again? Opponent comes back in with the Shadow Swampert. Our Dragon Claws will deal some nice damage here, so let's see if our opponent decides to shield anything. He just lets us go here. We do resist the Hydro Cannon, so it will most likely be an EQ here. At this point we can just go in with Obstagoon and try to farm down. We don't need to shield 1 Hydro. We can also leave the EQ even though it's dealing nice damage from that Shadow Swampert. Opponent decides to throw Hydro Cannon. Here just farm it all the way down. And let's see what there is in the back. And in the back there is a Wall Rain. So here we will deal some nice damage with the cross chops. We have a bunch of energy here. We can most likely go for 3 cross chops here. It will depend if our opponent decides to try to take us out with an Icicle Spear here. Opponent is farming up a bit here. At this point I think I will leave an Icicle Spear and I'll just leave it with like 2 HP. And then I can throw another cross chop here, dealing some good super effective damage. And I have 1 shield, but I know that I can leave the EQ fine. So here I will just farm it all the way down and I don't need to shield anything. I would need to shield, of course, for double EQs, but 1 is not threatening against the Stunfisk, especially not from a Shadow or from a non-Shadow Wall Rain. Next matchup here we have a really nice lead, Dragonite lead. Opponent decides to stay in, so here I either think that she will try to catch or she will just go for a superpower and then dip afterwards. So opponent decides to stay in, does not shield a Rock Slide. So as my opponent is staying in, I'm thinking like is there something weak against Stunfisk in the back? Because she's staying in. And she does decide to farm up a bit more and possibly trying to catch a rock slide, but I just farm more and more. And here I get to land an EQ onto the Stunfisk, which does get shielded here. We can take one EQ fine, so that's no problem. And here we can just start ramping up with those cross chops. Let's start with the cross chops here. We'll deal some nice damage onto the Stunfisk. There's the first one. See if our opponent decides to throw a move. Opponent decides to throw a move here. If this is another EQ, I will go down, so I think I will shield this. And here I should have really farmed up way more. I could have done like 6 counters at minimum here. But I decided to throw early. So for the next time, I could have farmed up more, obviously. But I will, even though I didn't farm too much, I would still be able to get off a Night Slash onto this Dragonite, which does get shielded. Will I reach another one? I'm trying to catch a move here. At this point, I think I will leave the superpower just barely, so let's see if our opponent will maybe try to swap out and snipe me here. Opponent decides to stay in, so then I can just throw a Rock Slide here and get rid of this Dragonite. And now I'm really looking forward to seeing what there is in the back. And in the back there is a shiny Steelix. Really nice flex here. I'm not reaching my Earthquake here. I still have an Obstagoon alive, which will deal some nice fast move counter damage. But I also have the Como O with the close combat. Here we get the debuff on ourselves with the Psychic Fangs. And Steelix wins CMP here. And at this point I think I will leave the Psychic Fang just barely. If we do just leave it, then we can throw a close combat here, which will deal some nice damage. And then we still have the Obstagoon, which will reach a cross chop here. And that's a GG, so good lead, close matchup. The 2 previous matches were bad leads and not that close matchups. But we take those. Really lucky for me there was a Steelix in the back. Next opponent here we have a Stunfisk versus Primarina. Opponent decides to hard swap the Trevenant here. So here I decide just to stay in for a bit. Farm up a bunch of energy. Because when the Primarina comes back in, now I can deal some nice damage with an EQ onto that one because he swapped out immediately, but I stayed in. So that way I know that the Primarina is not really threatening. Opponent decides to throw the Seed Bomb onto the Obstagoon here. Here we can just start adding up with those Night Slashes here. See here, opponent, he still has 2 shields, so let's see whether he decides to shield the Night Slash or if he lets it go. We don't really need to shield yet, but I will have to shield one Seed Bomb later on. And we do resist those Shadow Claw fast moves, so they are not really dealing any damage. Your opponent decides to shield on Night Slash. It's kind of like Day Shield, Ice Shield situation. Here I just try another Night Slash. It does get shielded once again. At this point I'm really starting to think what there can be in the back combined with that Primarina. So here I will just double shield my Obstagoon, then I can farm up a bit more and then throw a Night Slash here. Let's farm a bit more here. Opponent maybe is trying to catch a move. At this point throwing this Night Slash is really not that necessary. I should have saved that energy. But then I can just combo play with my Stunfisk, as I do have the EQ loaded from when we swapped out earlier in the matchup. And Primarina is not really a quick Pokemon, so here we can farm up a bunch and then throw the Rock Slide to get rid of it. There we go. In the back there is a Jellicent. What I do wrong here is I throw at 4, I should have done 1 more to make sure I get on good timing here. That way opponent gets to sneak in a free move and getting some extra energy here. And as you can see there, if he did not sneak that fast move, I could have reached my EQ here. And then land that if my opponent did not throw the Bubble Beam. But we are still in a good spot here, as long as the Jellicent does not run Ice Beam. If this would have been an Ice Beam, I'm not really sure if I would have lived it, because Como O is not really that tanky. Here we can throw our Dragon Claw here, and then we should be able to farm it down. Yeah, we just do 1 fast move, farm it down. And in the back, of course, there is the Love Trevenant remaining. Next matchup here we have Stunfisk versus Greedent. This is more of a neutral matchup. I mean, the crunches from Greedent does not really add up, but Greedent is really tanky, so this will take some time here. Does he get a debuff? He does not get a debuff. I decide to hard stop my Como here. Maybe try to see what there is in the back. And in the back there is a Charizard. So it's really nice to lure this Charizard out, because having this one on the Stunfisk would have been bad. Even though it's running Dragon Breath as the fast move and not Fire Spin. We will just start adding up with these Dragon Claws. Dragon Claw does get shielded, opponent farms me down. I can wait the switch timer a bit here, so make sure I can possibly swap out later and not get stuck in here. I decided not to throw, we would have lost CMP anyway, so I just stay in a bit, and then I will throw my Rock Slide, which will take this Charizard out if it gets no shielded, does not shield. Opponent comes back in with the Gradient, here I hard swap my Obstagoon here. It's really only the Body Slams that deal nice damage here for my opponent onto my Obstagoon. This has to stay in, so I just start adding up those Cross Chops. See, opponent is still staying in, so at this point I'm really thinking about what there can be in the back. Is he really that weak to Obstagoon? And in the back there is a Trevenant, so when they stay in like this, you know that for sure he is really weak against the Trevenant in the back. Excuse me, against the Obstagoon. Otherwise he would have probably swapped that much more previously here, because Gradient onto my Obstagoon is not a good matchup for him. We can't take this Seed Bomb fine. At this point we will just start adding up with those Night Slashes. Here I can just swap in and throw Rock Slides from Stunfisk here. It deals some nice damage, as we already have some good amount of energy here. Opponent decides to throw here. We can't take a Seed Bomb, we can also take a Shadow Ball with no problem. And here, let's see. Should have thrown a bit earlier here, so that's on my part. It would have been safer to throw earlier, but we would have leave the Seed Bomb anyways. So it didn't really matter, but it's nice just to throw a bit earlier there so we don't CMP. And then it's just a Gradient. At this point we can just throw a Rock Slide to take this out, and it will be a GG. And there we go, GG's, well played to my opponent. As always, if you guys liked the video, make sure to drop a like, comment, maybe subscribe. And until then, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching, have a good day.